been thinking about this day for a while now, and I remember, and those that came before me, talking about how they would take their tribal governments in the trunk of their car. And they would take, I remember Chief Leonard would talk about this, and I know that was true of Ron and others. The tribal government was in the trunk of their car, and they would meet at a kitchen table. And it would be at the kitchen table that they would discuss the affairs of their nation. And it's a long history of keeping our tribes alive, of keeping that government-to-government relationship between our tribal nations and between the United States. And it took that effort of those people, those sacrifices, that perseverance for us to be here. For us, we've been called many names. We've been called the Kansas Shawnees, the Ohio Shawnees, the Loyal Shawnee, and even the Cherokee Shawnee. But today we stand here in our council chambers of the Shawnee tribe because of the perseverance of those people, of individuals along the way. When we were at our darkest period, there was individual or a small group of individuals that stood in the gap and said, no, we're going to continue this government. And when it came time in 2000 to recognize us as a people, one of those early questions that they asked, did we have a continuous government? Had we been a continuous functioning people from time immemorial? And it came down to a single document, if I remember the story right. It was signed by Freddie Half Moon.
1961.
1961, there's a single document in 1961 that's stitched together that narrow gap that proved we was a continuous government. It's because of people like Freddie Half Moon, people like Don Greenfeather, people like Neaki James Squirrel that led the way to get us here to this day. It's people like Chief Ron Sparkman, who we gather today to honor their perseverance in times when things weren't as bright, but we knew a brighter day was ahead if we persevered. I want to tell you about this man that I've come to know as my friend. With over 5 decades of community service, Ron Sparkman has been a cornerstone of leadership and community for the Shawnee tribe. Ron's born on January 1, 1936 on his family's Indian allotment in central Ottawa County on Hudson Creek. He attended rural schools and graduated from Miami High School. Ron served in the Oklahoma 45th Thunderbird Division and was honorably discharged with the rank of sergeant in 1961. From 1954 to 64, when he was not actually actively serving in the military, he worked as a supervisor at Crane Manufacturing. In 1964, he was selected to become the executive director of community action for Ottawa, Craig, and Delaware counties in northeast Oklahoma, as well as the executive director of the Pitcher Housing Authority in Pitcher, Oklahoma. He held both positions until 1974. For the past 52 years to present, he has served as the motor license agent for the Oklahoma Tax Commission in Ottawa County, a testament to his enduring commitment to public service. From a young age, Ron has been involved in various tribal activities. In the 1960s, W.W. Keeler, principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, asked him to serve on the Cherokee Constitutional Committee. And since the mid-1980s, he's been actively working and with the Shawnee tribe. I remember as a kid going to meetings at White Oak, Oklahoma at the high school. And when the Shawnees had very little, we came together as a people and had box suppers. And that box supper is what funded our nation. And Ron was there. And Ron was very much involved. And this would have been late 70s, maybe early 80s. But I remember those times, that dedication. And I remember you being there, Ron. In 1968, Ron assisted Robert Whitebird, chairman of the Quapaw tribe, in forming the Intertribal Council of Northeast Oklahoma. That council is comprised of 9 federally recognized tribes: the Eastern Shawnee Tribe, Miami Nation, Modoc Tribe, Ottawa Tribe, Peoria Tribe of Indians of Oklahoma, the Seneca Cayuga Tribe, and the Wyandotte Nation. The Shawnee Tribe became a member of this consortium with the reestablishment of our federal recognition in 2000. In 2004, Ron was elected as vice president of the Intertribal Council. Ron also proudly serves our extended community on various boards and committees. This list includes the Indian Affairs Committee of Oklahoma, a 50-year member of the Lions Club, the Masonic Lodge, and the Elks Lodge. He's an active member of the American Legion and the Actar Shrine. He's also a proud board member for the First Americans Museum in Oklahoma City. As chief of the Shawnee tribe, some of his proudest moments that he's told us, and I'm sure he'll tell you some more, he has much to be proud of. He served as the chief of the tribe from 2000 through his retirement in 2019. He helped to facilitate the building of our new headquarters out on 8 Tribes Trail. He successfully placed land into trust into Guyman, Oklahoma, and he now serves as ambassador for the Shawnee tribe. He also takes great pride in helping to design our Shawnee flag and supporting our tribal elders and honoring them. And he counts himself with the laugh as being one of those elders now, and helping to build strong leadership foundations for future generations. And ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to introduce to you Chief Ron Sparkman.
Very plainly, this is unbelievable. I never in my wildest dreams figured anything like this would happen, especially to me. And as I stand here, there's no way that I can accept that this belongs to me. Ben has mentioned earlier about the early days, and I was mentioning with Corey and Roy over there a while ago. I remember the first time we had a tribal meeting was at the White Oak School. The building was locked. I had to find a window that was open and crawl in to unlock the gym so we could have a meeting. And look at this today. Unbelievable, unbelievable. And as Ben mentioned, let's start off. I want to, before I get into the history of the Shawnee tribe, I'd like to go back and start off with the history of the Intertribal Council. You ladies and gentlemen here today, and by the way, it's good to see Chief Wallace. As I was president of the Intertribal Council, my hearing is terrible. There's my ears right there. She'd tell me what everybody was saying, okay? And I appreciate that very much. And it's certainly good to see you all here, and I appreciate it. But anyway, let's go back to the start of the history of the Intertribal Council. And I think some of you chiefs probably don't even know this history, but we're gonna find out about it today. I think the reason I got involved is because I had a secretary and a typewriter. Bob Whitebird, his wife Polly, asked me if I would help them out with a project. They had been contacted by a gentleman by the name of Tom Talamania, who was he was the chief officer of the Claremore Indian Hospital. And they wanted to write up an application for the very first CHR program. And yet, we had to bring all the tribal leaders together, and we met at Bob Whitebird's house at Quapaw on the kitchen table. That kitchen table, ladies and gentlemen, became the forefront of the start of the Intertribal Council. We met over there, I don't know how many times. And when I say we met, I want to mention those old leaders. Guys say we're a great, great group of people. We had Charlie Dawes of the Ottawa tribe. We had Forrest Olds of the Miami tribe. I think it was Mont Connor of the Wyandotte tribe. Julian Blue Jacket of the Eastern Shawnee tribe. Let's see, Guy Froman of the Peoria tribe. Have I left anybody out? The Seneca Cougars, I'm sorry, Vernon Crow. and those old leaders, you talk about a nice group of guys. They were a great, great bunch. And I want to tell you folks something. Everything that you see in Ottawa County right now that's related to the Indian tribes started on that kitchen table. I'm not talking about 95% or anything. I'm talking about 100%. That's where it started, on that kitchen table. And today I am so proud to have been a part of that. And we typed up the applications, we got it approved, then the CHRs became a reality to help the senior citizens of this area. So then we got an invite. Richard Fitzgerald was superintendent of the Seneca Indian School. Seneca Indian School is still in operation. They invited us to come down and be the advisory board for those children down there. and we gladly accepted that responsibility. But again, they needed different things, and we started out with different programs. But, well, I want to tell you about an incident. I don't think he's here. Is Mike Staubus here? Mike, anyway, his grandmother, of course, I was a lot younger then, she told me a story that I've never forgot. And I think today this story would make national headlines. Fox News would be in here filming it, I think. Well, Seneca Indian School, although it was used the term school, it was actually a home to these children. They stayed there, they milked cows, they raised pigs, they planted a garden. It became their home. Well, anyway, what was really funny, she told about this, down below the hill from the Seneca Indian School was the railroad tracks. She's 7 or 8 years old. She's at this school. She knows that she lived down by White Oak. She knew that train went west down by White Oak. Barefooted, she walked down and got on a train and rode that train to White Oak and got off and walked home. And to me, that is almost unbelievable for a little girl to do that. But it just showed you what perseverance they had to accomplish something. It's a lot different in this day and time. And also at the Seneca Indian School, we had, and again, I got the typewriter out, we make up the application, and we type up for a program, and I think it's one of the best programs the government ever funded, and I'd like to see the same program in all the school systems in this area right now. They called it the Foster Grandparent Program. Very, very, very successful. We received monies to where we could pay a minimum wage to an elder to, if you will, become buddies with that little boy or girl. You have no idea how successful that was. Not only did those grandparents take the time to become a part of that child's life, but we paid the minimum wage. We had an administrator. She was a good Shawnee lady. I seen to that. So anyway, these foster grandparents, although they got a minimum wage and they would work like 10 to 15 hours a week, they became buddies to these children. And it was unbelievable. They spent most of their salary taking care of that child. They could get permission on weekends, and they could take them home. And they really became that grandparent to that child. And there's one story I want to share with you about a lady and this little girl. Kind of hard to even talk about this without getting a tear in your eye, but anyway, this little girl and this grandparent became great friends. I don't mind telling you, is Mrs. Marshall down at Fairland. And she spent more money on those kids than she ever drew in her salary. But she took care of them. But here's the thing that I really think shows the success of that program. When that little girl got up and she kept in contact with Mrs. Marshall, Mrs. Marshall was probably 80 or 90 years of age, but that little girl was getting married, and she went and got Mrs. Marshall, and she became her maid of honor at her wedding. Now, to me, that tells you, the talent that is out there that I'd like to see it utilized today in our school systems. And, we've got elders right now all in this town that are sitting home today working crossword puzzles or whatever. And they could, their talent could be utilized. And I think it's a shame we don't take advantage of that. But anyway, so much on for the Intertribal Council down in Turkey Ford, down at the Seneca Cayuga country. We had some gentlemen down there, Reverend Pickard at the Friends Church, along with some others. they started a feeder pig program down there. And it went on for years, and they called me and asked me if they could get some money to buy some feeder pigs so they could give them to these individual kids. They could raise some swine and then pay back to the fund. And that went on. It was very, very successful. I was lucky enough, I got with the co-op association, I got them $3,000, and that's what they started on, and that's what, but I'm going to come back to that program later on, so don't let me forget this, okay? Okay, let's go on with the intertribal. Let's go on to where in 2000 we are federally recognized. One of the things that we did when we got federally recognized, us and the Delaware tribe were part of Cherokee Nation. And Bruce Townsend, the attorney in Tulsa, he was chief of the Delaware tribe. And so we are working with Cherokee Nation, and we want to, be on our own. And we are going to be part of this new constitution that Chief Barnes mentioned earlier. And I'll be blunt and frank, we got nothing. We were outvoted on every issue, which is understandable. But that gave us the incentive to go out on our own and do things. And having started doing that, and I was telling my partner Judy, I said, Judy, I don't know how in the world I'm going to thank everybody. Here I'm receiving the honors, and there's so many people that need to be thanked, and you can't start thanking individuals or you'll leave somebody out. And so I happened to run across an old document, and it's on your screen right now. We decided we were going to build a building at White Oak. This is our first project we started. Of course, we're not federally recognized. We don't get any funds. But we had a list of some of the Shawnee people that had received land payments, and we used that list, and we sent out a mailing. It is unbelievable the response we got. And I want to call your attention to the very first name at the top of that list. I think his name's Abeen. Never been to Oklahoma in his life. Lives in New York City. Come to find out he was a playwright, whatever that is. Anyway, he called me and talked to me, but believe it or not, I knew his granddad. And he sent me $500. My goodness, that's a fortune, and that's a start. Now, that list is not complete. I'd done the best I could to get everybody's name, and you didn't have to be Shawnee. There's a lot of people on that are not Shawnee. And, well, for example, Wilma Mankiller. Wilma worked with us and helped us. And it showed that we had the fortitude to get out and get something, and we made it work, and we grew from that. And so as I stand here today, please don't give me the credit. Look at that list, and all those people should be involved. And when I say they were involved, I involved them in every phase of what we were trying to do. And let's fast forward on a little bit. Well, we made other applications through A&A to get funds to run programs, but it was difficult because we were not federally recognized. But anyway, we were honored because the Oklahoma Indian Affairs Commission recognized 39 tribes, but the Shawnees, the Delawares, and the Uchis were not part of that federally recognized tribes. They did not have it. So, morning, Mayor, how are you? Anyway, welcome. And anyway, to go on, of those tribes, I received a phone call, and I'm going to refer back to those elders that are on that list. I received a phone call from the Oklahoma Indian Affairs Commission that wanted our flag. Wait a minute, we don't have a flag. So then what you try to do is come up with what should we put on our flag? And I think you've seen the picture of the flag here many times. But I took advantage of every elder to get their views and ideas, and everything you see on that flag has a meaning. And I'm not going to go into elaborate detail, but I will say this. I was very fortunate that I was friends with Charles Banks Wilson, and I spent time over there, and he made one of the most famous drawings called the Shawnee ribbon bet, which is a premier drawing for the Gilcrease Museum. And anyway, he knew a lot of Shawnee history, so he would draw something, and then we'd look at it, then here I would go, I would take it back to the elders of the tribe, and we'd go to White Oak and we'd talk about it, and that is the final design of the flag. But the one part that I remember, the bright star represents Tecumseh. The two leaves at the bottom are white oak leaves that were taken from Victoria Doherty's camp at the Quapaw Powwow grounds, and those are sealed somewhere. I saved them. So this is a history of our flag, and I'm very, very proud of that flag. Now, as we go on with the Shawnee tribe, we met with Cherokee Nation, and we worked with them to tell them that we wanted to be separate from Cherokee Nation. Some of the original board members, they called me and they said, "Ron, you remember the $3,000 we got you, or you got us for the feeder?" He said, "We're really through with that program, and we know your tribe could probably use the money. And why don't you come down, and it's in the bank over at Southwest City, Missouri. That's where they banked, over there." They said, "Let's have lunch and we'll close that account out." So I said, sure. I was glad to see them. I hadn't seen them in years. So we go down and have a nice lunch, and we go over to the bank. I'm thinking, maybe they've got $200 or $300 left. And so I talked to the banker, and he said, I said, "Well, how much money we talk about?" He said, "You give me $7 and I'll give you a check for $10,000. That is a fortune to us. And I gave him the $7, and he gave me a check for $10,000, and we started programs at the Big Cabin School, fixed a roof on the gym, and among other things that needed to be done down there. And that payback from that feeder program was really a lifesaver to us at that time. And I can't thank those people enough for how they worked with us. And of course, what you have to keep in mind is that money was in the bank. You remember when interest rates were real high back in that period? Well, that money just was growing like crazy. That's how it grew, because of the high interest rates. So anyway, we were really, really indebted to them. So anyway, we keep working, we keep things going, and we keep writing for various programs, get the typewriter out and get to work. And having said that, I want to recognize somebody right now. I want to recognize Laurie Arnold, who works for me, and she was my employee, and then eventually became my stepdaughter. But she was very, very good at volunteering to type for all the Shawnee tribe. And Larry, I want you to stand up, okay? She done more work for our tribe. I'm talking about, I don't know, Laurie, 3 or 4 or 5 years. Every time we needed something to type at the office, Laurie, come here, and she would type it up for me. In fact, she'll verify this. One time we were working on a program, and Don Greenfeather was involved. He came up, and we were kind of having a slight disagreement on what was going on. And so Laurie entered, and I'll never forget what she told Don. She said, Don, she says, I'm so white I glow, but I know more about Shawnees than you do. And there also, while I'm talking about people that work for me, where's Shannon Epperson? Shannon, there she is. I hired Shannon when she was fresh out of high school or during high school. And I gave her first job. Lo and behold, here she is today working for the Shawnee tribe. And I used to tease those girls because back then you typed everything. And you could have little bottles, and some of you younger ones won't know, but have little bottles of what they call whiteout. Every time you'd make a mistake, mark over it and retype it, you know. And I used to tease Laurie and Shannon. I said, I'm the only guy in the world that buys whiteout by the barrel. So, but I really appreciate the work that you all have done. And now let's go back. We're going to talk to Cherokee Nation. They're going to say we can leave. We're going to get legislation passed. Now, some of you have heard this story, but I'm going to tell it again today one more time, okay? We finally got Congress to introduce a bill that says that we can leave Cherokee Nation. A major step. Our congressman at the time was Tom Colburn, and he introduced it, and the House passed it. And, boy, we really think we're going to hit a home run. You know, it's going to be, but all of a sudden it hit a snag. And we had a lot of people working on that, including Ross Swimmer, who was a former, under the Reagan administration, he was a former Assistant Secretary of the Interior. And we worked on that, I don't know, almost a year. But all of a sudden, in the Senate, it was held up. They would not. And the holdup was that the Senate would not approve it until the Bureau of Indian Affairs gave them a letter saying that it was okay, that we had met all the requirements. We could not get that letter. I mean, and we're dead. There's no way we're going to be federally recognized. And this shows you just how lucky a guy can be. Of all the work that all the people done on that bill, it boiled down to that one letter. And Ross Swimmer says, Ron, he said, I can't get that letter out of them. Here's a former assistant secretary. And what I'm about to tell you is almost unbelievable. Every morning, as Judy will tell you, I go to McDonald's at 9:30 and drink coffee. Well, I'm wondering what to do. I go out there and I pick up the Tulsa World. And there in the Tulsa World, they've had a big fundraiser in Oklahoma City for Hillary Clinton. And they've raised a lot of money. And it lists the people that are on that. Well, at the time, through the Oklahoma Indian Affairs Commission, I got acquainted with Senator Bob Cullison, who's from Skytook, that he was the state senator for the Bird Creek Shawnees that are out there. But anyway, Bob and I became good friends. And I had Bob's phone number. And here I am sitting at McDonald's talking to Bob Cullison. I said, Bob, you seen the Tulsa World? He said, yeah. I said, boy, they had quite a fundraiser for Hillary last night, didn't they? And he said, yeah, they did. I said, do you know those? He said, well, yeah, I know every one of them. I said, do they owe you any favors? He said, well, yeah, they owe me a favors. And I said, can I have one of them? He said, well, sure. We said, Ron, what are you talking about? And I started going in about, we need this letter from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. He said, Ron, hold it. I don't have a clue what you're talking about. He said, let me make a phone call or two and I'll call you back. And sure enough, 30 minutes or so, he called me back. He said, you be home tonight and you're going to get a phone call. And I remember it was on a Monday night. It was a council meeting tonight. I called the council and said, hey, I won't be there. And I got this phone call. And frankly, it was a former governor who, he said, Ron, you must understand we haven't talked. Now, this is 25 years ago, so today I can say we talked, okay? Anyway, he said, I'll see what I can do. And this was on a Monday night. Tuesday morning before noon, I get a phone call from Ross Swimmer. This is a guy that couldn't get the letter, you know. He said, Ron, who do you know? And I said, what do you mean? He said, that letter came out of the Bureau and it's over to the Senate right now. And the next day, Ronnie Froman, who's chief of the Peoras, had a wire service network, and he called me and he said, congratulations, the Senate just passed your bill, you're now a federally recognized tribe. That is almost next to unbelievable, but exactly, that's of all the work the people done, one phone call at McDonald's over a cup of coffee, and it's unbelievable. I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky. I'll admit it right heads up. So then we are now a federally recognized tribe. What do? Back now to the Intertribal Council. Hey, we've agreed to leave Cherokee Nation. We need a home. Well, there I am now, which I used to be the guy with the typewriter. I'm now running the chief for the Shawnee tribe. So they welcomed me. All those old chiefs welcomed me. I think the only two that were there at that time, I believe, were Chief Wallace and Chief Friend. I think the rest of you came on later. And they made me feel real welcome. And they said, and by the way, I want to back up quite a ways. That land out there, back in the early days, Bob Whitebird and I went to, after a meeting at the kitchen table, we went to Oklahoma City and met with the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and got that spot of ground out there. And it was put there for the Intertribal Council and a hard rock museum, which kind of told about the mines and picture, which the people over there didn't want it, so we dropped it. It became the Intertribal Council. So they gave us a spot of ground out there. In fact, I think it was the Eastern Shawnee's spot of ground, but it was a swamp. I mean, we had the worst piece of ground out there, and I am so proud of this. I happened to find out that Soil Conservation Service had a pond building program, and we needed that cleaned up. There was so much brush and stuff, you couldn't even walk through there. And so we went out there and we dug out that trench, and that's the pond you see out there now. And it became a small lake to the ducks and geese, and my son Johnny, he keeps them fed out there. But anyway, as it turned out, after we constructed our building, we became the premier spot out there. It's the best looking spot out there, and we're very proud of that, okay? So then, now I'm a member of the Intertribal Council, and we have our monthly meeting out there. And, you know, the old Chief Leonard was president of the Intertribal Council and was for years chief of the Miamis. And the vice president was Charles Enyart. And he was chief till he resigned, I think, in 2006. Well, you know, we've got to elect a new vice president. Well, all the other chiefs out there said, well, Ron's the youngest one. He needs to do some work. We'll make him vice president. So, okay, vice president sits over in the corner and does nothing anyway. Well, regrettably, 2 years later, Chief Leonard passes away. And all of a sudden, I'm home, I'm like, wait a minute, I've got that job out there. And with the help of all the chiefs, we made a lot of progress out there. We done a lot of things, and such as the health clinic, and also the food program, and several other programs. And I am so proud of that Intertribal Council. And I don't think this community realizes just how important that is. But it's still going every day, and it just makes you feel. But one of the premier projects, and one that I am very, very proud of, is getting all these chiefs together, and they've got roads money. And I called the Turnpike Authority, Neil McCaleb, who was the chairman of Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. I had met Neil because, to back up a little farther, they put me on the Oklahoma Indian Affairs Commission, and I got with him then, got acquainted with him. So I called him and I told him we had a project up here we wanted to talk about. And I said, we've got an intersection that is terrible. And long story short, and I've got the copy of the minutes, and anybody wants to see them, there were 16 people there at that sign-in sheet. All the chiefs were there. Neil McCaleb, I asked him to send a representative, and he said, well, can I come up? And I said, well, sure, you can come up. And he did. And he came up, and at that meeting that day, we had the Bureau of Indian Affairs there, had the Turnpike Authority, and the State Highway Department. And that day, Neil McCaleb said, I will pay for the south half of that. It's paid for. The Turnpike, or the Bureau of Indian Affairs, says if the chiefs, they're agreeable, we'll take a little bit of each one of your money, and we'll pay for the north half. The city of Miami put some money into it to do some traffic lighting or something like that. The highway department's there. They said, well, we can't get on it right now. I said, wait a minute. Here's a project that you have 100% funding for. The state's not going to spend a dime, and you can't work on it. Folks, it took 7 years. Rudy Schultz was mayor at the time, and I said, Rudy, we're not going to live long enough to see that project completed out there. But it is completed, and it's one of the finer projects the Intertribal could ever do. And they're working on it right now, I know quietly, to do that road all the way to Highway 69. So Intertribal, you chiefs, be very, very proud of what you're doing. Chief Langford is now the president of the Intertribal Council, so if you want anything done, go see Chief Langford. Don't come to me, okay? But it's really a great project. Well, I know that I've kind of hit the highlights here. As Judy and I go out to dinner tonight, I'll probably think of a dozen things that I should have said that I didn't. But I just want all of you to know, don't ever forget those people that are on that list. They're the ones that deserve all the credit. And while I'm talking about that, I want to introduce my daughter Connie and my son Johnny. These two. And while I'm at it, my niece Dana, she's sitting there also. Anyway, in fact, I think, and they probably won't admit this, but I know it's true. I know they sacrificed a lot of things while I was out chasing these Indian issues. But I think it's very important with what we got done and what we accomplished. and I am so, so proud of it. And to me, after crawling through the window to the White Oak Gym to have a meeting, and meeting here today, folks, this is just unbelievable. And I'm so proud of the leadership of Chief Barnes and the rest of this council of keeping things going forward. And I told Chief Barnes, I said, look, you've honored me, you made me the ambassador, and I really enjoy that. But I don't want to ever forget that you are now the leader of the tribe, and I don't want to interfere in any way. And we started out with getting the land into trust out at Guyman, and that land, and well, I can't say enough. We mentioned Neil McCaleb a while ago. He was a Chickasaw, and I had, through the Oklahoma Indian Affairs Commission, had an excellent, excellent relationship with the Chickasaw Nation, and they became our partners. And I want to say they're the largest tribe, or financial-wise, they're probably the richest tribe in the United States. And they have done everything to work with us and be our partners, and we will never be able to repay them for everything that they've done. And it was really a pleasure to form that friendship and to be able to call them on a daily basis to get things done. And if you're ever out at Guyman, why, be sure and stop in and look things over, okay? Now, having said all that, I want to take just a few minutes to talk about things that are really personal. Let's talk about this building. Here I am today, and with my name stuck on the door. Back in the 40s, this was the Goodyear store. They sold tires, they worked on, changed the oil in the back. Upstairs here was a dance hall. And yes, I've been up there. And yes, I'm old, but Hank Thompson and the Brazos Valley Boys, they played for dances up there. Bob Wills, the Texas Playboys, they were up there. And so I have a connection with this building already. It goes back. And when they didn't have dances, they had Teen Town up there. And this is where all the kids at school came down here on Friday night, and you had a social time. And I found out my partner Judy, they had chaperones. Her mother and dad were the chaperones up there to keep us lined out. And I want to carry it on just a little farther. The building right behind it we have was Fribley's Hardware. And in that hardware store, I became fascinated with saddles. I think the tooling and the leather work on a saddle is simply fantastic. In fact, if you come over at my office right now, there's a couple of saddles I've got. If you want to buy one, I'll sell you one. But anyway, that hardware store was just utterly unbelievable. It just came to town. Out from Hudson Creek, we came to town every other Saturday. That was our social life. Our only contact with the world out there was the mailman. To carry this personal thing on a little farther, right across the street over here was Fry Motor Company. That was Fribley's Hardware, Fry Motor. This is where the Plymouth, DeSoto, Dodge, and International Truck was right across the street. The very first car I owned, you all remember Chief Bill Follis of the Modoc tribe. In fact, I failed to mention a while ago, back on the first intertribal, Dutch Walker was chief of the Modocs at that time. Anyway, Chief Bill Follis's dad, he worked over there, and I bought my first car right across the street over here. Across the street right there was the Davis Paint Store. Next door to that was Baker Boy Bakery. Laurie's mother and my wife Dee Dee, as a young girl, worked in that bakery store. Next door was Anders' Shoe Store. Next door down was the Glory Be Theater. Next door down was Kaiser's Grocery. My first job, my first paying job, was at that grocery store. I worked from 7:30 in the morning until the last customer left at night, which was generally around 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And for that day's work, I made $5. Johnny says I still got $2.50 of that first $5. But anyway, that's how we got started. So here I am today, standing at this building with my name on the door. And I'm telling you people, it's unbelievable. But I accept that, and you don't know how I appreciate it. And I know I've probably over my allotted time, but I wanted to share things with you. And especially tell each one of you chiefs what a great group we are. And let us continue to work together, okay? And yes, we have council chambers. I've had dozens of council meetings. And you don't necessarily agree on everything, but you find a common road where you can bind together. And I'm going to conclude here a little bit, but I just want to say that reminds me of an old gentleman who used to gave the prayer, and I think it's what he said was kind of appropriate today. They asked him to give the invocation. He said, Lord, he said, I don't like buttermilk. He says, Lord, I don't like that white flour. And he says, Lord, I don't like that greasy lard either. But you mix all that together and you come up with a good biscuit. And he says, and I love biscuits. So he says, what I'm asking here today is let us all blend together. Let's mix everything up and let's come out with the positive. And that way we'll make it. And just remember, the future you hold can be successful if you'll never forget the past. So I leave here today. I thank each and every one of you for being here. And I just hope that everything continues to be successful the way it is right now. Thank you all very much.
Hi, my name's Roy Baldridge. I'm currently second chief of the Shawnee tribe. I started with the tribe was taking a language class and started attending council meetings, and then was encouraged by Chief Sparkman to join our council. So I've always been fascinated with politics.
My name is Mark McDowell, and I am the treasurer of the Shawnee tribe. Probably what interests me most is building generational wealth for our people, so we can continue to have programs and jobs and services.
My name is Monty Combs. I'm in seat 5 of the Business Council, and I've been on the council for 8 years. Help our elders out as much as we can to learn from them and the language, to learn from the past, how they spoke.
Hello, my name's Corey Weinsberg. I've been on the Business Council now it's been well over 12 years probably now. I'm an educator, welding industry. I teach welding, and so anything that involves our students getting into trades, blue collar type work, and sending them to college, I'm all about getting our students or our tribal members into colleges. An 18-year-old kid can leave my program and can go out and make 6 figures right out of high school. You can make a lot of money doing the trades because there's not very many people becoming welders, electricians, plumbers.
So my name is Drew Dixon. I was elected in 2024. The topics that interest me the most are the ones where we're able to help our citizens give back to those people that have looked out for us for all of those years. Specifically our elders and our young people. And then the topics preserving like our heritage and our culture, telling our story of who we were and who we are and where we came from.
Diana McLean. I've been on the council, I think, close to 7 years. I'm on the Grand Gateway board. I love that. I like all of it. It's so interesting that everything interests me, and I always have lots of questions.
My name is Carolyn Foster. I think the elder program, helping the elders and the children, plus the health. I'm on the health board at the Miami Northeastern Tribal. I'd like to see us to get more businesses to bring in stuff so we can have more programs helping our citizens.
I'm John Sparkman. I am on Council Seat 1, and I'm starting my 3rd year in a 4-year term. What can we do for the present, but how can we extend this tribe well into the future after I've gone?
My name is Malachi Sears. I'm Business Council Member Seat 6, and this is my 1st year serving on this council. It's been wonderful. It's been a very different experience than anything I'm used to, but I'm doing my best to learn everything I can and adapt to any challenges that come my way.
Sort of what Chief Sparkman had mentioned today. When I started, we were meeting over at the White Oak Community Building near White Oak, Oklahoma, and right after we separated, we were there for about 2 months, and we were forced to move. We had buffalo at the time, but we were forced to move our buffalo and move to the building that our elders had purchased over at Big Cabin. And we were there probably for about 3 years whenever the tribes up here in Miami, Oklahoma invited us to move our offices up here. And at first, we were in the intertribal building. We had our tribal administrator and a secretary. That was our only staff at the time. And then later we were able to build a building. As Chief Sparkman had mentioned earlier in regards to the pond, that happened then at that time. But that was our first building, and we later was able to build a community building. Those were the first 2 buildings. Well, we also, through a grant, we were able to move our CCDF program through a shared location over an intertribal building. And then the other buildings came, we leased the buildings that we are in today. We were able to use those funds to purchase 3 buildings and refurnish them, remodel.
When I first started, we were actually in the tribal headquarters in that little bitty conference room that's in there, and there wasn't even room for guests, hardly at all. And of course, back then we didn't have any interest. It was hard to get people to fill positions back then. So that was pretty tight. And then we went over to the community room, I guess is what we've been using now. Then we had to go to another place for a little bit because the ceiling fell in when we had that flood of water when the pipes broke. Now we're back over there. And I finally got Cassie to get me a new chair so it does not peel on my clothes. So there's my funny story for that. Yeah, so now we have really nice chairs.
When I first started, we was in the tribal headquarters building, and then we moved over to the community building, which was a bigger space, thank goodness. From there to here, glad we have our own little space where we can give the citizens back their building.
My first couple years, or the first few years, quite a few years of being on the council, we were just in our main building over there across town, in a room smaller than this, just meeting every once a month and stuff. And now, you know, we went and moved into our other building where we had the great big room, but we kind of have our backs to the crowd and stuff, the way we have it set up. And so now we got our new chambers where we'll be seeing all of our members. Everybody will see us eye to eye and stuff, have our meeting and stuff, and they look very nice. Our chambers are very, very nice, very impressive.
The council chambers we come from, they were kind of, in my opinion, an informal setting. The new council chambers gives us a formal place where we can come together and provides a more formal setting, adds to the professionalism of what we're trying to accomplish.
Years ago, I come from Hutchinson, Kansas. That's where I was raised. And I would come down to visit Carolyn Foster, my cousin, and she'd always drag me to White Oak to meetings. And half the time we'd get there, well, the weather was bad, so nobody showed up. So, but then later it was over to Big Cabin to the school. Then Ron appointed me to be on council, and then I was elected twice. So, but I never thought we'd have anything like this. I mean, you know, because then we didn't have any money.
When I first started, it was before I was ever on the board, we were at Big Cabin, and then the White Oak gym was the first one, I guess, and then Big Cabin. And then we got up in the Miami area. So we've done, being in the gym at White Oak, I remember that a lot, sitting on the bleachers doing our deal, yeah.
Well, I can remember from some of the elders in the tribe and from Dad, how this tribe had nothing, and some of the places that they had to meet and how they held this tribe together. And that's so important because they helped keep the tribe alive, and they got us to this new position. And it's all about developing friendships or relationships with people out there in the world to help sustain this tribe. But we have to go back and be sure to thank all those elders and past chiefs that kept this tribe going. Because the easiest thing in the world would just have been give up. But they didn't do it, and now it's up to us to take this on into the future.
Well, like I say, I only attended about a half a dozen meetings in the last one, so I don't have a whole lot of experience, but you can tell we're moving up, and it's great to be a part of it. It's great that all the people that came before us have done the work that they've done, and we're standing on their shoulders. It's clear that they paved the way for us.
That's one of the things I'm excited about now, is that we can now reopen our community building for events, you know, like weddings and funerals.
Now things feel permanent finally. It feels like maybe that we've attained something finally. You know, we have a place to be proud of. It doesn't feel makeshift anymore. It feels like we actually are a government.
It feels great to have a permanent place. This is a really nice building.
I think it gets us more in touch with our tribal citizens when they're here in person watching our meetings and stuff. Being able to have our meeting where we can see eye to eye and stuff, something we've never been able to do, it's going to be new tonight. We're having our first meeting tonight.
I can't wait to have our first meeting. We walked in that one kitchen. I said, I wish my kitchen at home looked this nice. And, you know, it's going to be here for our future generations, and that I'm proud.
They're beautiful. I knew we were redoing them, but I never expected them to be this nice. And to have as many office spaces, I didn't think they could get that many in this building. It's fantastic, and I'm very proud of what our tribe has come for, might as well say nothing. People giving their own money to do stuff up until what we have now. We've came a long ways.
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, growing up in Pitcher, I can remember some of those tribal chiefs coming out to our house there in Pitcher and talking politics, Indian politics with Dad. And they ran their tribe out of the trunk of their car. So when you look at what all these tribes have gone through to get to where they all are today, is just fantastic. And I think it's pretty much saying that the Shawnee tribe has arrived.
I'm hoping that it's seen as a shining beacon for how far we've come and how quickly. You know, it wasn't, like Ron said in the interview, it wasn't long ago we was having meetings in the White Oak School and having meetings at our old council chambers. Served its purpose, but we're moving up, and it's wonderful to be a part of it. I think it's going to be a great tool that we can utilize for many years, and I'm very proud of it. I'm very grateful.
I feel old because, you know, 2001, where we started from, like I said, when we moved here to Miami, we had 2 staff. Now we have around 60, you know, just here alone. And it's just, it's sometimes it's hard to take it all in, you know, because it's, I'm excited, you know, where we were, where we've came from, and I think we still have a long ways to go. You know, I'd mentioned the community center. I would love now to be able to focus on building community, because it's something we really need in our tribe to reconnect and have discussions with each other as to what Shawnee means to each one of us. I was born in a farmhouse, my dad, my Shawnee granddad's house. I remember so much. It was, you know, the things that I learned back then, I hold with me today. I remembered my granddad's house. Kids didn't speak around adults unless they were given permission. I hated it at the time, but now, you know, I understand the importance of being able to listen, that you don't have to be the loudest person in the room, but you take in so much more when you can listen and have a soft conversation. So when Chief Sparkman asked me if I joined the council, I had a vision back then, and what I wanted was to be able for us to build a continuum of care facility, you know, where you would have independent living for the elderly, assisted living, and then nursing care. But in conjunction with that, we would also have sort of like daycare facility, but you would have that connection where they could sit, they could stop, talk, kids could learn, you know, all the stories, all the history. You know, 20 years later, we're still not there, you know, and I don't know if I'll ever see it, but that was my starting when I began, was my vision. That, and I wanted to honor my granddad. I've been lucky to work with others on the council, like Chief Barnes, and we share that same vision. It's to build our community and to help our community, and it's not just with our citizens, but even here, you know, with our staff. We had talked about building an environment to where employees could feel safe, comfortable, and be able to do their jobs without worrying about the next election. You know, I've been lucky. A lot of people, they had mentioned one of our former chiefs, James Squirrel, and he had. I had spoken with him on one visit, and he talked to me about the importance of community and working for our citizens. And he was a great man, and that stuck with me, you know.
We're a presence now, and people realize that we're here to assist the community. And even people that don't live here, now they realize that we really do have headquarters, and we really do have a judicial system, and we have laws, and we have just a wonderful financial backing now. Just, I mean, can't stop there though. We have to keep going. We have to branch out more. We can't depend on a casino to make our livelihood for forever.
It speaks that we are growing pretty good, that we're, finally, after so many years with Turkey Nation and being on our own and getting our financial footing, it's really nice to have our own buildings.
It shows how fast and how much we've grown over the past few years, because originally it was just a handful of employees in one little office, and now we have multiple locations, multiple offices, and we're expanding. We're making more money now. And the growth, we're helping out in our community here in Miami, Oklahoma.
To me, it's a symbol of our growth from where we were 20, 30 years ago. As Ambassador Ron Sparkman talked about earlier, started out with meetings happening out of car trunks. It really testifies to how far those leaders before us have brought us and where we were then to now, and really kind of puts it into perspective from where we're going to go from now to in the future.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I can't believe, how we've grown. When it first started, we thought we were doing great then. So now with expanding, it's just unreal. There's no way to put it into words.
Back in the old days, I could not even imagine we'd be where we are today. I remember when we came over and had the grand opening for our first community building and all of that. We thought that was fantastic. And then now to own something in our own tribes and stuff, something we don't have to lease, it's ours.
You talk to the people who attended today's ceremony, they were just amazed how this place looked. Even the person that we bought the building from, Larry Smith, was amazed on how well it looked. So I think we made a pretty good statement in Ottawa County today, and we made a pretty good statement for the Shawnee people.
Ron Sparkman, he was our chief from 2000 to 2019, and there was a lot. He was a special person, and I used to tease him. There used to be a comedy called Green Acres, and there was a character. He was a salesman that, his name was, they called him Mr. Haney, and I used to tease Ron that, he was the Mr. Haney of Indian country, because Ron, everyone was a friend, and he could, the deals that the idea that we were able to move here, that he got 8 tribal leaders together to agree to allow us to move here to Miami, Oklahoma. The idea that he was able to convince a conservative Republican governor to help us do a 2-part determination to put land into trust. It's just, the odds were just mind-boggling, and I, on several occasions, told him and told others I didn't think it was possible. He made a liar out of me. So I think he's been tireless, and I think, he deserves that honor.
Oh, it had to be named after him. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have anything. So we had to. But we had to name it after him. Just for his legacy.
It's really nice. I've known Ron for many years, and to have it named after him, and for being our chief for a really long time, it's an honor to have it named after him.
Having a new permanent location and then having it named after Ron Sparkman is very huge, because since I've been on the council for more than a dozen years and stuff, I started learning all the council stuff from him. He's like, Corey, at a young age, I'm glad to see you here. Because I think I was like 32, 33 when I first started, and I'm 45 now. So he's like, I want to see more younger people get involved. And then to see it grow and have a nice permanent location, it means a lot to me. And everything that he worked so hard to get set up for us as a tribe, pushing for the casino was the big push for so many years, and it kind of felt like it was never going to happen. And he went out and made those connections. He got all that stuff started and set up for us and got it going and got us the help that we needed to get that casino going. It's very nice to see this chambers named after him, because he put in a lot of work, his own time, a lot of his own money and funds, going around politicking, trying to help us get a casino set up just where we could start making more money to provide for our tribal citizens. So I am very grateful for that man.
Chief Sparkman did a lot for the tribe, as he spoke on earlier, and the chiefs before him as well. It really honors, it signifies the commitment and dedication he put into moving our tribe forward.
I admire Ron, and I think he well deserves it. For him, after all these years, to be honored, it's wonderful.
No one deserves it more than Ron does. If it wasn't for Ron and Greg Pitcher and some of the others, we wouldn't be here today.
Well, it's quite an honor, and Dad would be the first one to tell you that it took a lot of people to get to this point, and a lot of people, and he realizes that, and I realize that, but it's a great honor.
I've known Ron Sparkman since I was a kid. I remember when I first met him, he found out I was Shawnee, and he was just thrilled. And he gave me some feathers and little pins, and he wanted to talk to me about, everything and anything and everything. And it was great to hear the stories he had to tell about, how we gained our federal recognition and our humble beginnings, and just to see how far we've come from those humble beginnings to where we are now. And I hope we continue to grow exponentially.
I mean, we went from having nothing just in a matter of 5 years to having a lot. I remember right before the casino opened, we were going to have to cash a CD just to make payroll. And now we have huge programs that we support completely ourselves. It's wonderful.
I'm excited about where we are, and I'm excited about where I see us going.
I appreciate being on the board. I appreciate helping our citizens. I just appreciate being able to say I'm proud to be a Shawnee.
I've only been on here going on 3 years now, and it's been a real pleasure to serve with the council members I've served with so far. It's an honor to be on Shawnee Development and Shawnee Global, Shawnee Technical. So we've got a lot of things going, and just looking forward to carrying this tribe into the future.
It's been a great day. It's been a wonderful day, and I'm looking forward for the years to come.